When I say intelligence, I want you to completely erase that mental image of the loudest person in the room. We're talking about invisible intelligence today. Basically, if you do these 6 quiet, completely private things alone, your actual IQ is likely far higher than any standard test could ever measure.
Right off the bat, we've got to dismantle a pretty massive myth. Most people naturally associate intelligence with straight A's, shiny credentials, or the ruthless ability to just win an argument at all costs. But you know what? Modern psychology tells us a completely different story. True cognitive sophistication rarely announces itself in public. It is absolutely not a performative metric. It operates quietly, privately, in the spaces and moments that literally nobody else witnesses. So here is our course syllabus for this explainer. We'll be breaking down 6 private cognitive markers: epistemic patience, active self-opposition, metacognition, cognitive flexibility, intrinsic drive, and finally, intellectual agility. Let's get right to it. Okay, let's dive into this first habit: embracing epistemic patience. Essentially, epistemic patience means tolerating the profound, sometimes agonizing discomfort of simply not knowing. It's the act of turning a difficult question over and over in your mind without demanding an immediate resolution. Think about a modern workplace challenge, like, say, a sudden, unexplained drop in quarterly sales. Instead of instantly pointing fingers at the marketing team just to relieve that sinking feeling of anxiety, a patient mind just sits with the data. Psychologists actually consider this to be one of the absolute highest cognitive functions a human brain is capable of executing.
Look, the average mind absolutely despises uncertainty. It panics, rushes to conclusions, grabs the nearest available explanation, and forcefully seals the case shut just to make the anxiety of the unknown go away. But the genuinely sharp mind, it embraces that tension. If you routinely find yourself sitting alone in your car after a tough meeting, just letting the ambiguity of a situation exist without instantly forcing a neat little narrative onto it, you are definitely displaying high-level cognitive functioning.
Moving on to number 2, active self-opposition.
Active self-opposition means genuinely challenging your own deeply held positions. It's actively building the strongest possible case against your very own opinions. Imagine drafting a major project proposal for your team and then, before showing it to anyone, spending a full hour actively trying to destroy your own pitch. You are looking for every single flaw before anyone else can spot it. Make no mistake, this internal engine is the quiet driving force behind virtually every major intellectual breakthrough in human history.
You see, most people waste immense amounts of private mental energy simply reinforcing what they already think. They're constantly replaying conversations where they were right, or inventing imaginary arguments they would have totally won, quietly congratulating themselves. But rare minds do the exact opposite. If you regularly find yourself totally alone, genuinely dismantling your own arguments to see if they hold up, your IQ is likely highly elevated. I want to pause the lecture format for a second and just pose a question directly to you. Think about the last time you felt intensely angry, sad, or instantly reactive. Why did that specific situation trigger that specific response in you? And that leads us perfectly into our third trait, metacognition. Now, what's really interesting about this concept is that it represents a critical shift. Metacognition is the practice of tracing your emotional patterns backward to their psychological roots instead of just reacting blindly. Look, anyone can feel an emotion, but if a vague email from your boss suddenly makes your heart race, and instead of firing back a defensive reply, you privately study exactly why you felt so threatened, well, you're practicing a form of metacognition most people never even access. Treating your own emotions like data points is what separates reactive minds from truly intelligent ones. Let's look at number 4. Cognitive flexibility in memories. This brilliantly illustrates how the mind doesn't just statically store information like some dusty hard drive. A highly functioning mind is actively reorganizing its past over time. Years ago, you have an initial experience. Years later, you revisit that memory. But today, you reinterpret it through a completely newly developed lens. Highly intelligent people regularly revisit old memories, old lessons, and old conclusions. But, and this is key, it's not out of nostalgia. It's strictly for deep intellectual growth. If you've ever been sitting alone and suddenly realized that a massive, painful failure from 5 years ago was actually the exact lesson you needed to succeed today, that's it right there. That cognitive flexibility is a defining marker of true intelligence. Up next, Section 5, the pure intrinsic drive. Notice the stark difference here in how we naturally learn. Shallow curiosity is highly transactional. It's like learning a new software just to snag a promotion or solve an immediate problem at work. But intrinsic drive, that is completely different. This is when you find yourself at 11 p.m. on a random Tuesday, diving endlessly into the history of Roman architecture or quantum physics with absolutely zero practical payoff for your career. You're doing it simply because it fascinates you. If you have that pure, untethered drive when you are completely alone, it's one of the clearest psychological signals of a high-functioning mind.
Which brings us to our sixth and final trait, real-time intellectual agility. Real-time intellectual agility is literally the ability to catch your own flawed reasoning mid-thought and voluntarily redirect your brain without a shred of ego. Just think about that for a second. The ability to self-correct while you are actively thinking, not 20 minutes after the fact, but right in the middle of a sentence, is a profound capacity. Honestly, it's something formal education almost never teaches, and sadly, most people never develop it. So, the crucial point is this. The average mind commits to a mental direction and forcefully follows it all the way to the end out of sheer cognitive habit or stubbornness. But the sharp mind catches itself. Imagine being halfway through a passionate argument in a team meeting, suddenly realizing your underlying data is totally flawed, and voluntarily saying out loud, "Actually, scratch that, I'm wrong about this," right then and there. That graceful, egoless pivot, it is incredibly rare.
All right, let's bring it all together and look at common versus rare traits.
Think of this table as a quick review of our core curriculum today, summarizing the quiet, invisible work of the mind. Let's just walk through it. When facing the unknown, common habits rush to conclusions, right? But rare habits practice epistemic patience. With our beliefs, the average mind reinforces existing thoughts, while the rare mind actively opposes itself. For emotions, it's reacting blindly versus tracing things back metacognitively. Memories are either stored nostalgically or they are subject to cognitive flexibility. Curiosity is usually just transactional rather than fueled by a pure intrinsic drive. And finally, reasoning, committing out of pure habit versus demonstrating real-time agility. I want to read this really powerful quote directly from our source material because it absolutely anchors everything we've talked about today. True intelligence has always lived in private. It is the quiet, disciplined, often invisible work your mind does when no one is watching. Real cognitive sophistication is not a loud performance given in a meeting room, and it is certainly not the cleverness you display in a comment section on social media. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Are these invisible habits already living inside you? Take a moment today to really think about your private, quiet moments. If you do these 6 things alone, they've probably always been there. You simply needed someone to finally name them for you. Thank you so much for diving deep with me today, and keep nurturing those rare, invisible habits.